Have you ever been betrayed by someone you loved the most? I announced my pregnancy, only to discover that he was cheating. I dug up proof and set a trap. Then, I exposed him at dinner. Everyone saw the truth unfold. He begged for forgiveness, but I walked away. Now, I have taken back my power. See how I won? I announced my pregnancy to the world, only to find out my boyfriend had been cheating the whole time. It started with a single message. A stranger, someone I had never met, shattered the illusion of my perfect little family with just a few words. My heart pounded as I uncovered the truth: lies, parties, other women. But I didn't break. I didn't scream. Instead, I plotted the perfect revenge, one he'd never see coming. I never thought I'd be that woman, the one who gets blindsided by the man she loves. I had always prided myself on being strong, independent, smart enough to know better. I wasn't naive. I wasn't the type to turn a blind eye to red flags. Or at least, that's what I believed. Until it happened to me. The night I found out, I was lying in bed, my hands resting on my stomach, still adjusting to the idea that there was a tiny life growing inside me. Just a few hours earlier, I had made the official announcement online, sharing the excitement of my pregnancy with family and friends. My boyfriend had kissed my forehead, telling me how happy he was, how much he couldn't wait to be a father. For once, I felt at peace, secure. I had spent months convincing myself that he had changed, that the late nights, the parties, the roommates, who never seemed to grow up, those were all just temporary distractions. Soon, we'd be a family, and he'd settle down. Then my phone buzzed. At first, I ignored it. I was too tired to deal with whatever it was, but something made me look. Maybe it was instinct, some deep part of me that knew my happiness had always been too fragile to last. "I'm really sorry, but I thought you should know." The words blurred in front of me. I sat up, my hands suddenly ice cold. She wasn't just some random girl looking to start drama. Her message was detailed, precise. She knew things where he had been, who he had been with, what he had been doing. She didn't just say he was cheating. She told me how. He's been out every weekend, partying with different girls, drinking, getting high. He was with one last weekend. I thought you deserved to know. I wanted to believe it wasn't true. I wanted to delete the message and go back to the blissful ignorance I had been floating in just minutes before. But I couldn't, because deep down I already knew. There had been signs. Late nights that stretched into early mornings, excuses that didn't quite add up, the smell of perfume that wasn't mine lingering on his clothes, the way he guarded his phone like it held state secrets. I had ignored them all. I had convinced myself that he was just enjoying his last bit of freedom before fatherhood. But the truth was, right in front of me now, in black and white, I needed proof, real proof, not just the words of a stranger. My heart hammered as I went into detective mode, my fingers flying over my phone screen. I went through old messages, social media posts, anything that might confirm what I was now desperate to disprove. That's when I found her. One of the girls mentioned in the message, a name I had heard before, but always in passing. I didn't even hesitate. I clicked on her profile, then on the message button, my hands shaking as I typed. "Hey, I know this is random, but I just need to ask you something." I didn't expect her to respond. Maybe she'd block me. Maybe she'd laugh at me for being so pathetic. But a minute later, my phone lit up. "I was waiting for you to ask." A chill ran through me. She wasn't smug. She wasn't trying to hurt me. She sounded guilty. "We hooked up over the summer," she admitted. "I didn't know you guys were back together then. But I knew what was coming before she even said it. It happened again, a few months ago, in December and January." I stared at the screen, my stomach twisting. That was it. That was the moment everything inside me cracked. Because there was no talking his way out of this. No misunderstanding. No, it didn't mean anything. I was carrying this man's child, and he had been with someone else multiple times while I sat at home, dreaming of the life we were supposed to build together. But I wasn't done. I needed to see it for myself. I needed to feel the final blow, so I kept digging. I went through Snapchat, scrolling through old stories, my pulse thudding in my ears. And then I found it. It was a short video, no more than 5 seconds long, buried in the stories of one of his friends. 2 girls laughing, lying on a couch, their legs draped over each other. The room was dimly lit, but I recognized it. I had been there before. On the table in front of them, 2 Polaroid photos. I zoomed in, my breath catching in my throat. That camera, I knew that camera, because I had bought it for him last Christmas. Wrapped it myself, tied the ribbon, watched his face light up when he unwrapped it. And now, here it was, capturing memories that were never meant for me. My hands clenched into fists. My breath came in short, shallow gasps. I had all the proof I needed. But I wasn't going to cry. Not yet. Because this wasn't over. Not by a long shot. I sat there in the dark, gripping my phone so tightly my knuckles turned white. The weight of the truth settled over me like a crushing force, suffocating and inescapable. I had proof. Cold, undeniable proof. My boyfriend, the man I had trusted, the father of my unborn child, had betrayed me in the worst possible way. And yet, I didn't move. I could have confronted him right then and there. I could have stormed into the bedroom, shaken him awake, and shoved my phone in his face, demanding answers he would never willingly give. But I didn't, because I knew how this would play out. He would lie. He would deny everything, twist the truth, gaslight me until I doubted my own reality. He would say, "It was just a misunderstanding," or "that girl is lying," or "why are you even listening to strangers on the internet?" No, I needed more than just proof. I needed to catch him in a way he couldn't escape. I needed to make him feel every ounce of humiliation and pain he had put me through. So I took a deep breath, steadied myself, and began planning. The first step was gathering every piece of evidence I could find. I spent the next few hours combing through his social media, scrolling back weeks, months, looking for anything I had previously ignored. And it was all there, the cryptic captions, the conveniently cropped out figures in photos, the late-night tags at bars and parties he had sworn he wasn't at. I checked his Venmo transactions next. A trail of payments, bar tabs, dinner bills, and most damning of all, a payment labeled for drinks. Thanks for last night, sent to a woman I had never heard of. My stomach twisted, but I kept going. I went through his texts. He wasn't stupid, he had deleted the ones that mattered, but he forgot one thing, his cloud backup. It only took a few minutes of digging before I found them. The messages. The ones he thought were gone forever. "Last night was amazing. I can't stop thinking about you. We have to be more careful. She can't find out. You looked so good in that dress. Wish I could have taken it off myself." I stared at the screen, my vision blurring with rage. How long had I been played for a fool? How many times had I kissed him goodnight while he was thinking about someone else? I refused to let my emotions take over. Not yet. I needed a witness. Someone else who knew the truth. Someone who would confirm it to my face. So I messaged another girl, one I recognized from the Snapchat story. She had been one of the women in the dimly lit room, laughing, carefree, blissfully unaware that her fun night had come at the cost of someone else's heartbreak. At first, she hesitated, but then I told her everything I knew. "I'm pregnant with his child," I said. "I just need to know the truth." Maybe it was guilt, or maybe she had no loyalty to him. Either way, she confessed. "I didn't know about you," she said. "I swear, I didn't know he had a girlfriend, let alone a baby on the way. He told me he was single. I nearly dropped my phone." Single? So this wasn't just about infidelity. He had been living an entirely separate life, one where I didn't exist. I clenched my jaw, my entire body trembling with anger. I could have broken down right then and there. I could have screamed, cried, let the heartbreak consume me. But no, he had taken enough from me. He wasn't going to take my dignity, too. Instead, I wiped my tears, sat up straighter, and decided exactly how I was going to destroy him. It wasn't enough to just leave. That would be too easy for him. He would play the victim, spin the story however he wanted, maybe even convince people that I was the crazy one. No. If I was going to walk away, I was going to do it on my terms, and I was going to make sure he never forgot it. The first step was setting a trap. I pretended like nothing had changed. I still sent him goodnight texts. I still smiled when he walked into the room. I let him believe he had gotten away with it. Meanwhile, I kept gathering evidence. I printed out the messages, took screenshots of the Snapchat videos, saved every bank transaction that linked him to another woman. Then, I reached out to his mother. She had always been kind to me, always treated me like family. I knew she would be at the dinner. We had planned for the following weekend, a small gathering to celebrate the pregnancy. His parents, his friends, my family, everyone who mattered. I told her everything. She was horrified, disappointed, angry. But most importantly, she agreed to keep quiet, because this wasn't just about confronting him. This was about exposing him. So I waited, let the days pass, let him dig his own grave deeper. The night before the dinner, he kissed me goodnight and whispered, "I love you." I almost laughed, because he had no idea that by tomorrow night, his entire world would come crashing down. The morning of the dinner, I woke up next to him and watched him sleep. His face was calm, peaceful, like a man who had no idea that by the end of the night, his world would be in ruins. I had spent days perfecting my plan, making sure every detail was in place. His mother knew. She had promised to keep quiet, to act like nothing was wrong, just as I had. His friends would be there, the same ones who had covered for him, laughed behind my back, and encouraged his double life. My family would be there too, expecting a joyous celebration of the baby we were about to bring into the world. And he was walking straight into the trap. I turned over, checking my phone. Another message from one of the women. He's been texting me all week. Of course, he had. He was still pretending to be single, still juggling his little fantasy, still thinking he had everything under control. I felt nothing but satisfaction as I typed my response. "Don't say anything yet. Just wait until tonight." He stirred beside me, his arm lazily draping over my waist. I forced myself to stay still, to let him hold me one last time, because by the time the night was over, he would never touch me again. The house was full of laughter and conversation when we arrived. His parents welcomed us in, my mother set the table, and his friends cracked jokes, oblivious to the storm about to hit them. He played the perfect role, wrapping his arm around my waist, beaming with pride every time someone congratulated him. He kissed my temple, whispered sweet nothings into my ear, leaned down to my stomach and murmured, "Daddy loves you already, little one." I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. I waited until dinner was served. I waited until everyone was comfortable, their plates full, their glasses refilled. I let him bask in his moment, let him believe that he had won. And then I tapped my glass with my fork. The sound was sharp, commanding. The room fell silent. All eyes turned to me. I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the moment settle over me, knowing that this was it. "I just want to thank everyone for being here tonight," I began, my voice steady. "It means the world to me to have so much love and support as we prepare for this new chapter." I glanced at him, watching as he smiled, completely unaware of what was coming next. "And of course," I continued, "I want to thank the father of my child, a man who has stood by my side through everything, a man who has been so dedicated, so loyal." His smile faltered, just slightly. A flicker of confusion crossed his face. "Good." I turned to his mother. "I want to thank you too," I said warmly, "for raising such a kind, respectful, honest man." She shifted uncomfortably in her seat. She knew what was coming. And then I pulled out my phone. "Actually, I have a little surprise." I tapped the screen, and the TV behind me lit up. At first, it was just a screenshot. A text message. "Last night was amazing. I can't stop thinking about you." The room went still. Another screenshot. "We have to be more careful. She can't find out." A murmur rippled through the crowd. Someone gasped. His face drained of color. "Wait, what is this?" he stammered, trying to laugh it off. But I wasn't done. Next, I played the video, the Snapchat story from his friend, the one with two women, his Polaroid camera, and a night he thought I'd never know about. The silence was deafening. And then his mother spoke. "You disgust me," she whispered. His friends looked away, suddenly very interested in their plates. My family glared at him, their expressions a mix of anger and pity. He turned to me, panic setting in. "Babe, please. Let me explain." I cut him off, tilting my head. "Oh, by all means. Explain to everyone why you've been sleeping with other women while I carry your child." He opened his mouth, then closed it. There was nothing left to say. I stood up, smoothed my dress, and grabbed my purse. "I won't raise my child with a liar. I won't build my life with a cheater. You made your choice now. You can live with it." I turned to his mother. "He'll need somewhere to stay, because he won't be coming home with me." And with that, I walked out, leaving him to drown in the wreckage of his own making. I didn't look back. Not when I walked out of that house. Not when I heard his mother's voice shaking with rage. Not when he called after me, scrambling for an explanation that would never come. The cold night air hit my face as I stepped outside, but it didn't chill me. I felt nothing. No pain, no regret, no hesitation. Because this wasn't just the end of a relationship. This was the beginning of something else, something better. As I drove home, my hands were steady on the wheel, my heart beating with a calm, calculated rhythm. I had spent too long letting him control the narrative, too long pretending everything was fine. Tonight, I had taken that control back, and he knew it. My phone vibrated on the passenger seat. I already knew who it was before I even glanced at the screen. "Please, talk to me." I swear, it wasn't like that. I messed up, but we can fix this. I let out a slow breath, watching the messages stack up, each one more desperate than the last. He still didn't get it. He still thought there was something to save. By the time I pulled into my driveway, my inbox was flooded. Missed calls, texts, voicemails. A man unraveling, scrambling to patch up the destruction of his own making. I didn't answer. Instead, I turned off my phone, walked into my house, and locked the door behind me. The silence felt different now. It wasn't the hollow emptiness I had feared. It was peace. That night, for the first time in weeks, I slept soundly. The next morning, I woke up to even more messages. But this time, they weren't just from him. His mother had texted me. "I'm so sorry. I had no idea. You deserved better." Then, another message, this one from a number I didn't recognize. "I know we don't know each other, but I saw the video. I just wanted to say, you handled that like a queen." I blinked at the screen, my heart swelling. The video, of course. Someone at the dinner must have recorded it, maybe one of his friends, maybe someone from my side. Either way, it was out there now. Part of me worried. Did I want this to be public? Did I want my pain to become entertainment for people who didn't even know me? But then, another message came through. "I went through the same thing. Watching you stand up for yourself gave me the courage to finally leave him." And just like that, the doubt melted away. This wasn't just about me anymore. He had spent months, maybe even years lying, sneaking around, hurting people without a second thought. And now the world could see him for exactly what he was. I had been afraid that walking away would make me feel weak, that leaving would feel like losing. But I had never felt stronger. Later that day, I got a knock at the door. I hesitated for a second before opening it, and there he was, standing on my porch, looking nothing like the cocky, smug man who had walked into that dinner the night before. His hair was a mess. His eyes were red, sunken, desperate. He held his hands up like a man pleading for his life. "Please," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Just hear me out." I folded my arms, leaning against the doorway, blocking his entrance. "I don't think there's anything left to say." "There is," he insisted, running a hand through his hair. "I screwed up, okay? I know I did. But I love you. I love our baby. I don't want to lose this." I let out a short, humorless laugh. "You lost this a long time ago." He flinched, as if the words physically hit him. "I was scared," he said. "I was stupid. I didn't know how to handle the idea of becoming a father. I felt like my life was over, and I acted out. But it didn't mean anything." I swear to you, it never meant anything. I stared at him for a long moment, letting his excuses hang in the air between us. It meant something to me. His mouth opened, then closed. He had nothing left to say. I deserve better, I continued. Our baby deserves better. I can be better, he pleaded. You could have been, I corrected. But you weren't. And I'm done waiting for you to change. Tears welled up in his eyes. For a split second, I almost believed them. But then I remembered the messages, the video, the months of gaslighting and manipulation, and I knew the truth. He wasn't crying because he loved me. He was crying because he had lost control. I want you to leave, I said softly. He hesitated, his hands curling into fists, his jaw tightening like he wanted to fight back. But there was nothing left to fight for. He nodded once, stepped back, and then, without another word, he turned and walked away. I watched him go, waiting for the ache in my chest, the regret, the overwhelming sorrow, but it never came. I closed the door, and for the first time in a long, long time, I felt free. I closed the door and leaned against it, inhaling deeply. The silence in the house wrapped around me, warm and steady, a stark contrast to the whirlwind that had consumed my life just days before. There was no more waiting, no more questioning, no more looking over my shoulder wondering when the next betrayal would come. I was done. I walked to the kitchen, poured myself a glass of water, and stared out the window. The world outside looked the same: cars passing, birds chirping, the sun casting golden light through the trees. But inside me, everything had changed. I had changed. For months, I had lived in denial, convincing myself that he would grow up, that the man I loved would magically become the partner I needed him to be. But he never had, and he never would. And I was okay with that now. My phone vibrated on the counter, snapping me out of my thoughts. I sighed, expecting yet another message from him, another plea for forgiveness, another desperate attempt to rewrite the past. But when I picked it up, I saw it wasn't him this time. It was his mother. Thank you for standing up for yourself last night. I raised my son better than this. I hope you know you deserve so much more. I exhaled slowly, my fingers hovering over the keyboard before typing a simple response. I do. Because I finally believed it. The next few weeks were quieter than I expected. After our final conversation on my porch, he had finally backed off. No more texts, no more calls, no more last-ditch attempts to fix what he had broken beyond repair. Maybe he realized there was nothing left to save, or maybe he had simply found someone else to lie to. Either way, it wasn't my problem anymore. Instead of drowning in the aftermath, I focused on myself, on my baby, on building a future that had nothing to do with him. I started small, rearranging the nursery, buying tiny clothes, sitting in the rocking chair, and whispering to the little life growing inside me, promising them that they would be loved, that they would be safe, that they would never have to wonder if they were enough, because they were, and so was I. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't waiting for someone else to complete me. I wasn't begging for scraps of love from a man who had never deserved me in the first place. I was enough on my own. One afternoon, I stopped by the grocery store, casually browsing the aisles, enjoying the simple pleasure of moving through life without the weight of a toxic relationship dragging me down. And then, as I reached for a box of tea, I heard a familiar voice behind me. Hey. I froze for half a second before turning around. There he was. He looked different, not in the way I expected. I had imagined him falling apart after I left drowning in regret, realizing he had lost the best thing that had ever happened to him. But he looked fine, a little tired maybe, but still him. You look good, he said, his voice softer than I remembered, almost careful. I know, I replied simply. A flicker of something passed across his face. Maybe surprise, maybe pain, maybe just the realization that I no longer needed his validation. How have you been? Great. It was the truth. He nodded slowly, shoving his hands in his pockets like he wanted to say more. But I didn't need to hear it. I didn't need apologies or explanations or half-hearted attempts to justify what he had done. And so, before he could find the words, I gave him a small, polite smile and turned away. just like that. Because the thing about closure, you don't need it from someone else. Sometimes, the real closure is simply knowing you've moved on. That night, I sat in bed with my hands resting on my belly, feeling the small flutters of movement beneath my fingers. A reminder that this was my future now, a future that had nothing to do with him. I wasn't bitter. I wasn't angry. I didn't even hate him anymore. I just didn't care. Because I had finally learned the most important lesson of all. When someone shows you who they are, believe them the first time, and never, ever settle for less than you deserve. Life has a way of teaching us lessons we never asked for, but sometimes the hardest truths lead us to the greatest clarity. This story is not just about betrayal. It's about recognizing your worth, standing up for yourself, and refusing to settle for less than you deserve. Too often, people hold on to relationships out of fear of being alone, fear of starting over, fear of the unknown. But the truth is, loneliness doesn't come from being by yourself. It comes from being with someone who makes you feel unseen, unheard, and unvalued. As we grow older, we realize that peace is more valuable than empty promises, and self-respect is worth more than forced companionship. Life is too short to spend it waiting for someone to change. When someone shows you who they are, believe them the first time. Don't waste your years trying to fix people who were never meant to stay. Walk away with your dignity intact, knowing that real love, whether from family, friends, or even yourself, will never require you to beg for it. The greatest strength isn't in holding on, it's in knowing when to let go.